Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
We made this.
Welcome back to We Are Starfleet, your Star Trek Discovery companion podcast. We are part of the We Made This podcast network. My name is Ian. I am co-hosting here with my man Mike Slammer, and we have a very special guest this week, Luke. I don't recall your last name. If you want to give it. Winch. Okay, Luke Winch. We're joined by Luke Winch this week, very special guest, also part of the We Made This podcast network, and we're here to discuss Discovery Season 3, Episode 12, There Is a Tide, the penultimate episode of Season 3.
What a great episode. I can't wait to get into this. Mr. Luke Winch, you are Luke_Winch on Twitter. You are a part of the We Made This network. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing and where we can find you.
Yeah, well, I mean, the second season of my podcast called Observing the Pattern has just ended its second season, just before Christmas. Observing the Pattern is a dedicated podcast to the TV show Fringe, which ran for 5 years back in 2008. It's always been one of my very, very favorite sci-fi shows. It kind of started out a little bit like an X-Files type copy, but then during the second and third season, it absolutely made its own kind of footprints on the TV sci-fi world. So yeah, that's just ended the second season. We're starting to record the third pretty soon, actually. And then also I co-host with Kurt North, who is also a prolific We Made This podcast host. We both co-host Make It So, which is the Star Trek Picard podcast. That will have some special episodes coming up quite soon. I'm going to keep that slightly secret, but just to make you aware, there are some special supplementary episodes coming your way.
Oh, cool. Okay. I talked to Kurt about doing one of those a while back. I should probably follow up with him.
Yeah.
Very cool. Good stuff. What's it been like, your experience watching Star Trek Discovery Season 3 so far?
Overall, I have thoroughly enjoyed this season. I think it's had some rocky episodes that haven't really hit the mark 100%. But I have to say the last episode, Sukal, Unification 3 as well, were some standout episodes for me. I thought they were absolutely excellent. And this one today, I think tops them both for me.
Yeah.
Good to hear. Yeah, I'm really digging the 3-part finale we're getting so far. First 2 parts have been quite good.
Yeah, definitely.
So on that note, Ian, I understand we have some emails.
We do. We got some emails this week after last week's episode. Our plaintive cries for more emails were actually answered. We had a couple. The first one is from Paul in London. He thanks us for the podcast. He's only been listening for a short while, but it's always, but he really appreciates the positive outlook that we have. He likes the fact that we're constructive in our criticism, and don't just, spend the entire time shitting all over the show. He actually wrote to tell us, how much he's enjoying the Admiral Vance character, and he has since the beginning, but, he suspects that Vance is a baddie. Now, I think that this is maybe a little bit out of date, given that, after this last episode we saw, I think we can probably put the, Admiral Vance as maybe a bad guy theories to bed. I don't know what you guys think, but he laid out his case for why he thinks Admiral Vance might actually be a bad guy. I don't know. What do you guys think? I know we've certainly expressed the thought as we've discussed season 3, and now that we're almost done with season 3, do you think Vance is on the side of good?
Do you know what? I think he is good. There's a very interesting dichotomy here with the Emerald Chain and the Federation as it is now. And I think we'll get into this into the episode, but there's a very interesting perspective of both of those societies, if you will. And I don't think either one is completely right in what they do and how they operate. And I think both of them have their flaws, and this kind of unification between the two of them is a very interesting prospect. And I think that Vance is doing what he thinks is best, even if we, the audience, might not agree with him.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a good take. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with you, Luke, on that. The whole scene breaking down the Emerald Chain and the Federation, and the way that Osira pitches it, you think to yourself, well, the Emerald Chain just sounds like another Federation, just with a different color to it, right?
Yes.
But when you get into the fact that they have these mercantile exchanges dealing in slave trades and all these goods, and it's likely, oppressing the weakest members of their own society in order to uplift the richest members of their society, which is kind of what capitalism is doing today. So there was a little bit of that as well in speaking to our current socio-political environment, especially here in the U.S. at least.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into that whole sequence with the two of them in our discussion a little bit later. Our other email was from a guy, Neil.
Yeah.
Neil, oh, is this your friend who said he was going to write into us?
That's my buddy Neil.
All right, right on. Yeah, he he mentioned to Mike. Yeah, he definitely name checks you. Yeah, he basically wants what we want. We want to see more Sahil. We've got this really compelling little side story in the beginning of this season, like the first episode. This poor guy is keeping the faith on this far-flung station, and we haven't heard from him again. It'd be nice if we maybe they sent him a message or something.
I would certainly hope so. Sahil is one of those true believers, and he's been alone on this relay station for generations. His father was a Starfleet officer, and here he is all by himself, keeping the dream alive. I really hope that they got something out to him, at least, a uniform proper.
Right. I think if I had my druthers, if we get a sort of rebuilding of the Federation, in the seasons to come, I really do hope that we get some follow-up with his character. I think he's a compelling one.
Agreed. Luke, what do you think about Sahil?
Yeah, I mean, there were some interesting kind of clues as to what may happen in the season finale, and maybe we'll see some returning characters, including Gabriella, who I think will make an appearance, hopefully with a Vulcan Romulan fleet behind her. Who knows? But it would be great to get maybe, Sahil and some of his compatriots to maybe turn up. I don't know how that would happen, but I'm hoping that they will revisit him and these far outposts out there and how they're going to kind of reunify all of them into the Federation again.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have seen, I hope, the title of this week's upcoming episode.
Indeed.
We got a new title. Yeah, we got another title change, right?
Yeah. That Hope Is You, Part 2.
Which answers that question of, hey, why don't we see Part 2 anywhere in the title list?
Yeah. I expressed this thought in our Discord channel, and I would have been doubly impressed had they saved that for a future, possibly season 4 episode. I can't recall if that's ever been done in a TV series before, and it would have broken the mold a little bit, in terms of, having these overarching storylines, combining into one, as the serialized modern television likes to do. But you know what? It is a bookend to this season, and I hope it's not indicative of everything going to be wrapped up with a nice, neat little bow, and the burn will be solved, and Starfleet will be back together, and the universe will be put back together by the end of next episode. I hope that's not the case, but we'll talk about that as we get into this. So, let's get into There Is a Tide, episode 12, directed by Jonathan Frakes and written by Kenneth Lynn, who also worked on House of Cards, interestingly enough. I personally think that kind of shows a little bit in this episode.
Yeah, the political intrigue for sure.
aired December 31st, 2020, which is New Year's Eve.
Happy to leave 2020 behind. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
Very happy. Yeah.
So let's get into our overall impressions here. And Luke, let's start with you.
This is probably my favourite episode of season 3, and Frakes is a master of his craft, and I think in this particular episode, his experience as a Star Trek film director really shows in this episode. It's got some great scope. The pacing and tension is fantastic. I mean, even though we know our principal characters probably won't die, there's a good amount of tension in this episode that that makes it exciting. And Frakes always knows where to put the camera, and he makes a really interesting into the personal with the close camera to the face, and then he knows when to pull it back and have these epic shots as well. And what I really like about this episode actually is this theme of the conflict between the bigger picture and personal interest, and I think that happens with a lot of the characters in this episode, and it really ties them all together in a really good thematic way as well.
Well said.
Yeah, I have to agree with Luke. I thought especially that last point you brought up about where this theme of putting your personal pride, your personal feelings aside for the greater good comes up in these two different stories, in the Stamets and Michael Burnham dynamic and the Osyraa Vance negotiation. And we see that in both of those sort of storylines, we'll get into this when we have the deeper dive conversation later, but you've got the Michael Burnham character representing the Federation ideals, the greater good, and the Vance representing the Federation's commitment to justice above all else. Whether or not those are the correct call in both of those cases, we can debate, which is to me another sign that this was a really well constructed episode, that we have these moral dilemmas where we understand both sides, even if we don't necessarily, and we might not necessarily agree with the decisions that our characters make. I think that made this all serve to make this a really compelling episode. This was, again, like last week, one of my favorite episodes of the season. I'm really liking the way they're finishing this season, and I really hope they stick the landing next week.
Yeah, the choice to focus on the action at Starfleet headquarters instead of cutting to Saru and company in the Nebula, I thought was a brilliant move, and it kept us on the edge of our seats and in the action the entire episode. I thought the pacing was excellent. I was glued to the screen, and when the episode was over, I was genuinely surprised. I actually shouted and jumped out of my seat, which no other Star Trek episode has actually made me done before. It's that strong. And having Jonathan Frakes with the film experience behind the budget to match what a film would get. I mean, this season has looked, sounded, and been amazing across the board. The visual effects team has really nailed it. And I know, Ian, you and I have talked about this several times over the course of this podcast, but I just feel like I have to mention it every episode for new listeners who may not have heard us talk about it before. But I love it. This is another strong episode. It ties a lot of the plot threads from throughout the season all into this. And I'm just going to say it. This is a 10 out of 10 episode for me.
Yeah, it's really rewarding to see them, have everything kind of work. And now 2 straight episodes, some of, what Luke alluded to, earlier that frustrates us sometimes watching the show is, the inconsistency and the quality of episodes from week to week. And we had really 2 of the strongest episodes this season, back to back. And like I said before, I really hope that we continue to see this level of excellence next week.
Agreed. I think season 1 and season 2, and this also happened with Star Trek Picard, the first half of the season was better than the second half of the season, whereas I feel like for Star Trek Discovery season 3, it's been, it's only a few episodes have really fallen short of the overall quality I feel they've been putting out.
Yeah, I think for me it was the middle bit. I mean, I personally thought it started with 2 fantastic episodes. The first 2 openers I think were brilliant, and just in the middle, there was just some frustrations with the writing. Some of the character moments fell a bit flat for me, but it's really started to gear back up again now. And I think the writing is on point, especially in this episode. And I'm really hoping for a kicker of a finale.
Fair enough. So, gentlemen, shall we jump right into the deep dive of this episode?
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what they do. We go pew 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 right into the action. The Viridians putting on a show of chasing and firing at the captured Disco on their way to Federation HQ, which still has its shields up.
Prior to the opening sequence here on the Previously On segment, this is just a quick note, but I really liked the nod to the Borg's cultural influence, where the regulators say what you want is irrelevant.
You will be assimilated.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void were prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere, and each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void were prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Did y'all get a little bit of a Star Wars feel with how it opened?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Especially since it's the sort of blaster style lasers felt very much more reminiscent of sort of Star Wars-y combat than Star Trek combat. Honestly, that's kind of consistent with this season as a whole. It's been a lot more pew 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 than torpedoes and phasers. It's felt a lot more Star Wars-y, the combat.
Yeah, I don't mind that, to be honest with you.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it. I think that's the most I'll say about it. I don't mind it.
That's fair. Great opening here. I thought it was quite clever that Osira had installed the Emerald Chain operating system onto Discovery. This certainly bypasses a lot of the, but how could the bad guys know how to use the ship type of plot points that always arise.
Yeah, I thought that was a really clever, detail. I like that they're thinking about that, because that's something that's been completely overlooked in all of the previous 799 episodes of Star Trek. So.
It's I've not been quiet about my opinion of Osira on the Discord channel. She hasn't, for me, really been a threatening presence on screen, but this episode, I'm really glad to say, I think it made me look at her in a different way, and I like the intelligence that comes through to her. She's very calculating and methodical, and all this step-by-step plan that she's obviously rehearsed with herself for so long, jamming the comms, maintaining the subterfuge that they're being chased to kind of gain access to the Federation. It's definitely changed my opinion of her. It's a little late in the game, but I definitely like her a lot more in this episode than I have previously.
Yeah, I think that also goes to one of the things that I liked about this episode. The Emerald Chain at large gets built out a lot more than what we've gotten previously, and yeah, I really liked it all. And I had that same sort of sensation of, wow, I wish we'd gotten a little bit of this earlier in the season, so that we kind of had a fuller appreciation of who we were up against and what.
So as we move forward, we have Book and Burnham actually using a transwarp network, which we've heard about, a lot of fans have theorized about, and is it a subspace tunnel, or are they using the transwarp network? Because they
really
mention it
unclear.
Yeah, in the episode, as Vance is looking out onto the action coming towards them, his sensors report that another ship is coming out of subspace. So is it transwarp? Is it not? But either way, we see it's full of debris from battered and destroyed starships.
Yeah, definitely.
And for me, it's a good explanation as to why no one would really use them. But if I were Admiral Vance, one priority mission would be, of course, let's clear that network. Let's clean it up. We have to find a way so we can make it useful.
Yeah, that was it was honestly one of those sort of parts of this episode that left me scratching my head a bit in an episode that was otherwise very clear. Book calls it a courier route, which I don't think we've had that term introduced before. Yeah, it was unclear. Is this a transwarp tunnel? It does look, believably dangerous, but it doesn't really, he's used that word multiple times before. He doesn't refer to it as a transwarp tunnel. And then, yeah, it just sort of opens up this hole in subspace that they kind of pop out at. And it looks like that method of travel was not that much slower than jumping instantly. So yeah, it's an interesting little taste of what some of these alternative travel methods in the 32nd century might be, but I'm a little unclear as to what exactly it is and why, yeah, like you said, they couldn't clear it of some of that debris.
Yeah, I think Book calls it a courier network. I believe his words are, but it's pretty horrendous. I mean, I wouldn't drive through that if you paid me. So,
yeah.
But great special effects. I really like the aesthetic of it and all this debris of ships. And there was like a Wanderer class ship as well there, I think they mentioned. But yeah, it was a really cool bit of special effects, really. If it was a bit hazy of what it actually was.
Right.
Yeah, Book's ship is one of the coolest far future designs we've seen thus far, and I maintain that seeing it morph around stuff is super cool.
Yeah, it's one of those sort of very believable far future bits of tech that we get in this season that I've appreciated.
It makes you wonder where, an individual, a private entity, if you will, would obtain some of these vessels.
Yeah, he doesn't mention it, does he, at any point? It just seems like it's just Book's ship,
Yeah. I mean, especially considering post the burn, there's, only so many vessels left, right? You're either building them if you have the resources, which a lot of places don't. So, Origins would like to be explored, yes.
And he does mention that he can use multiple different methods of FTL travel. So it's clearly a very modular kind of concept. It's a really cool ship. I do wish we learned a little bit more about where it came from.
Yeah. So ultimately, Book and Burnham, they emerge largely unscathed from this courier network, this transwarp tunnel, whatever they're using through subspace, and they force a crash landing into the shuttle bay of the Discovery to get back on board before the Discovery slips into Starfleet's protective field that's hiding their headquarters. And I can't help but think that this is a nice little nod towards the fact that for whatever reason, the shuttle bay doors on Discovery are always open.
Yeah. It does kind of, I think they closed at one point in season 1, but yeah, they've basically been, it's this gaping hole in the backside of Disco that Book manages to crash his ship into.
Yeah, it's pretty lucky that the Viridian didn't shoot into the shuttle bay, really, isn't it? Does it have shields or not? I don't know if it has shields like guarding the gaping hole, but yeah.
I think they make a brief mention of I think the shields went down on the ship when they go into the Federation HQ. I think it's a really quick line of dialogue that I think says that basically they got into the shuttle bay at just the right moment when the shields were down, and I don't know, they got in under the wire is what it boils down to. And yeah, Vance has actually ordered the Federation HQ. He was trying to hold off letting the Disco in to Federation HQ because he didn't really trust the situation, but he does lower the shields at the last minute, allowing Disco enough room to squeeze in before shutting out the Viridian.
Yeah, Admiral Vance really plays the caution well here. There's so many unknown variables. Of course, communications are being jammed, so they can't actually talk to the Discovery yet. And this is by design, of course. On board the Discovery, they have imprisoned all the bridge officers to the ready room, and most of the crew have been placed in the brig. And, considering that the Discovery's computer systems have been converted to the Emerald Chain operating system, Osira has full command of the vessel. So this is really the setup to try and get in. And as Book states later on in the episode, it's a plan wherein they suspect that Osira plans to just start shooting right away.
Right. Yeah, and when we see the bridge crew of Disco in their little makeshift prison, we see the bad guy from episode 2 is back. Good call, you. I think you said wasn't the last we saw of him, and I think I said it was, and I was definitely wrong. He's back. His hand looks
Zara
like
is back.
Frostbitten shit, but he's back.
Yeah, this time he's missing some fingers from the ice.
Yeah, I quite like Zara as a kind of low-level henchman, as it were, but I think he has a bit more kind of threatening presence than Osira maybe does, at least before this episode. But what I really like about it is he zones in on Tilly immediately, and it's a great callback to the second episode and this kind of rivalry that they have between them. I really like how they continue that into this episode.
Zara definitely seems a bit more unpredictable as a villain, whereas Osira has a plan. She has a purpose and a goal to accomplish.
Yeah. He's quite spontaneous, and you're not quite sure what he's going to do next. But I mean, you can say Osira is holding it together, but as we know at the end of the episode, when poor Rin gets it, that's this impulsiveness that she's probably kept in check until that point.
Yeah, I like that they're both, even though he's a henchman, sort of unlike her nephew, they're both intelligent, and that's clear. So he's not in the same sort of vein of her nephew, who was such a goddamn idiot. In addition to not being a very threatening person, like, he manages to be both threatening, but also, I think, he's got this. Yeah, he's got this cunning, this villainous intelligence to him that makes him a more viable threat than I think some of the other henchmen we've gotten over the years.
But what I like about him as well, really sorry, Michael, but what I like about him as well is that he cows to Osira. So he comes across this kind of cunning, dangerous person, but anytime he's in her presence, he's like this. Oh yes, I'm sorry. Yes, okay. Really cowing to her. So I like that kind of dynamic in his character.
Yeah, and another sign of his intelligence, because he knows exactly what she's capable of. He doesn't underestimate his opponents, generally speaking.
Yeah, when they enter that ready room and you see all the bridge crew together and you see Zara zone in on Tilly, there's quite a bit of compelling dialogue here, and Zara is really enjoying flexing his newfound status over the crew of the Discovery. And I like how it's played up here. These kinds of villains in Star Trek are pretty common, and I feel like Zara is very effective and very useful in this role.
And this is also where we get our first sign that something is, something more sinister, maybe not sinister, but, something more is involved in Osira's plan. She's given strict orders not to let any harm come to any of the captives, which is, our first sign that Osira is maybe not going to, launch all torpedoes, fire all weapons, et cetera, whatever else we might have imagined her plan involved. It's clearly not going to be a guns blazing kind of plan.
Definitely. There's a quick throwaway scene here. It's not actually throwaway. Let me walk back that comment because it's very important, where one of the Emerald Chain henchmen points out that even though the Emerald Chain operating system is installed, there's a little bit of memory that they just can't get rid of. And it appears to be Ancient Earth entertainment. And then the camera kind of zooms in on this 1920s black and white film image that's being played on one of the monitors of a woman. And everyone called it right out of the gate.
Yeah, everyone knows it's Zora.
That's Zora. Going into hiding. It pays off really well in the final scene. I really enjoyed it. That is the kind of foreshadowing that you see. It's blatant. It's obvious. It's in front of you. And it kind of answers the question for you in advance. Hey, where is the sphere data? What's going on with the ship's computer?
Yeah. I mean, it's the dramatic irony of everyone in the audience who's been paying attention this season knows what that knows what that code means. And, we know it's the ticking time bomb that the bad guys don't know is there.
Exactly. After the opening credits, the setup occurs where you have Book and Burnham who have crash landed in the shuttle bay. You have all the little maintenance droids, the Dot 23s. Yeah, I call them droids because, of course, that's Star Wars influence, right? But they're cute. They're cute as a button. So if you start thinking at this point, at the opening sequence here, where Book and Burnham are kind of trying to, figure out where to go and how to get to safety and how to save the crew. If you start thinking this is playing out like an action movie, you'd be absolutely right. All from the fast-paced walking down the corridor to the henchmen explaining to their boss what the situation is, it all plays out like a classic 80s action flick.
Another thing about the pacing that was really rewarding this episode was, that dynamism, that constant propelling movement forward.
Yeah, I think Michael Burnham does her finest John McClane impression throughout this episode. Crawling through shafts and losing her shoes, and there's little things like that, and they're little kind of cheeky nods, but they really work, and it makes for a really exciting, propelling episode.
Surely you mean Starship Mine references, not Die Hard references.
Yes. There is a bit of that in there as well. So we move into the Spore Drive chamber, and we get to meet a new character played by returning Star Trek guest star, Mr. Kenneth Mitchell, who played the Klingons Kol, Kor, and the albino Klingon who was guarding the crystals on Boreth. And here, Kenneth Mitchell plays a Emerald Chain scientist by the name of Aurelio, and he's working for Osira. Osira seems pretty protective of him, and the dialogue here indicates that there is a deeper relationship than one of just, hey, you're a scientist, you work for me.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
That's it. There does appear to be some kind of familiarity that doesn't exist between Osira and the rest of her henchmen.
Yeah, it's an interesting note on this character and speaks to, when Aurelio is saying later to Stamets that Osira is more than meets the eye. It is another one of those indications, to us in this episode that's the case. And another reason why I kind of wish we gotten some more of that earlier on in the season rather than learning all of this about Osira, kind of at the end as things are, heading to their inevitable conclusion.
Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, usually on Discovery, when they introduce a character in an episode and sometimes the writers try and force it upon you to relate to the character or to care about the character, and it sometimes doesn't work. I think this works really well, and I really, really liked Invigilator Aurelio, and I wish we'd met him just a little bit sooner, because I think he's a fantastic character.
Totally. And what a wonderful way to get Kenneth Mitchell back involved in the series. I don't know that all the listeners will be aware, but he was diagnosed with ALS, and he is in a wheelchair, and they were able to continue to get him involved in Discovery in a really meaningful and memorable way. I thought that was really nice, and not under a whole lot of prosthetics and makeup.
Yeah, it's a really nice sequence that plays out, and it gives him a chance to be in front of the camera as a actual person as opposed to the prosthetics.
One of the little notes that I thought was interesting, Osira is seeming, at least with Aurelio and perhaps others who fall into this sort of category of, who knows how many people she has under her thrall as she does Aurelio, but it's clear that she has framed her capture of Discovery as this noble effort to free the galaxy of its dependence on their dwindling dilithium supply. She uses different methods of control and manipulation depending on who she's talking to. Clearly, she probably keeps this guy isolated, definitely keeps this guy isolated from all of the horrible, brutal shit that she does. And the fact that she no longer does shield him at the end of this episode is probably going to come back to haunt her. That's just my guess.
Yeah, the whole character journey for Aurelio is really well played out in this episode, because he's obviously got this idealized version of who Osira is. She helped him when he was young, and he's come to kind of probably love her in some way or another. There's a huge amount of admiration from him to Osira, and there's a slight idealized version that he has of her, and that's when Stamets comes in later and starts to break down that idealistic view that he has of her, and he then starts to see, particularly at the end of the episode, who she really is. And it's a really great kind of journey that character takes.
Yeah, it's really interesting that he also comes in and he's looking at awe at the spore drive, and he calls this, the 23rd century he refers to as the golden age of science. So it's interesting that, we as a modern people, we look back on the Renaissance era with much the same nostalgia. And in spite of how much we've advanced so greatly in a short period of time, iPhones, computers, miniaturized chips, going to the moon, all those are due to the building blocks that were discovered, 5, 6, 7, 800 years ago. So, very much in the same vein of, looking back with nostalgia. And Aurelio here, he gets to be on the front line of seeing some of these ancient discoveries and new technologies that can result. So it makes you wonder about later on in the episode when Osira mentions she has the best funded institutions in the galaxy. So Aurelio, coming from one of these best institutions, well-funded institutions in the galaxy, it really kind of gives you a fair glimpse of under the hood of the Emerald Chain, and to see how this all shakes out. And they're not just some 2-bit gangsters running around the galaxy. They have an actual government. They have an actual state. And, we can of course argue about the variability of that state, of that government, but nevertheless, it exists. And this is where I think I agree with you guys so much about how if we had more of the Emerald Chain, if we had a little bit more time in an episode discovering what they actually were about, other than these mercantile exchanges with the Andorian Orion Syndicate, hanging out and guarding, and these bumbling guards, and then an oppressive slave colony, if we had learned a little bit more about their upper echelons, it would be more compelling as we get to the later bits of this episode.
Yeah, we were never given any more reason than we were never given a reason to think that they were any more than a crime syndicate. I mean, This is the first time we're hearing that they even have a constitution to amend. It would be, I think it would have been an opportunity for them to do some more world building. The first episode of the season, we can imply that, or infer that they're at a mercantile exchange from the Emerald Chain at some point, but they're never even name checked in that episode. I went back and I looked. It would have been so easy to build out in all of these episodes prior, and many of them, what exactly the Emerald Chain is. And it's clear that they're very far flung. I mean, they have access to, deep space stations that the Federation hasn't sent a ship to in 87 years. So yeah, I'm curious about the Emerald Chain. I wish we would have learned more about them prior to this episode.
I also wish I knew a little bit more about who Osira was in relation to the Emerald Chain. Is she a captain? Is she an admiral? Is she a senator? What is her role? What is her position? Is she just a military arm of the Emerald Chain, and she's kind of going a little rogue here with her own people? Or is she a sanctioned member of that government?
It's an interesting question that's posed later, isn't it, in the negotiations, and particularly her reaction to when Vance is saying, this treaty sounds great, we can work with this, but you need to be put on charges for your crimes, and that sets her off. So maybe her position in the Emerald Train is a lot more bloated than it actually is, and her idea of her own position is maybe not as big as it actually is in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Again, none of these criticisms are of, what they did in this episode, because we really like what they did in this episode. It's just that because we like it so much and because it works so well, it highlights opportunities that they missed, I think, leading up to this sequence of episodes.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
So getting back to Burnham and Book, the plan is in motion. They've secured Grudge in a panic room on Book's ship. And yeah, it's a throwaway line. The Queen is secure. The Queen is secure. I like that they took the time to let us know that the cat was okay.
We would have been really worried if they hadn't.
Mission 1. Priority 1 is to find and secure Paul Stamets. Book is able to use some cool technology to mask Burnham's life signs so she can sneak off while Book goes and distracts all the henchmen. He knows that, hey, listen, the sensors are operating. They're going to find us right now. They're on their way down here. You get out of here. You go save the day. And in this departure, they drop some I love yous. And I have enjoyed the chemistry between Book and Burnham thus far, and it pays off well. And yeah, it does feel a little last goodbye-ish. And if they kill off David Ajala's character, I think it would be very upsetting and a little bit too Game of Thrones-ish for my liking. But it's certainly being telegraphed that way. Yeah,
I hope they don't kill him, because I think he brings a lot of charisma to the screen, and he's a great he's a great character to have on the ship who isn't Star Trek, Starfleet Federation. He's a nice kind of rebel against that. And also, I'm with you. I think it'll be a bit too Games of Thronesy, and I'd like to see him in season 4 and watch his character kind of expand and get to know him.
Why
a bit
can't
more.
we just have Michael and him be in a normal, healthy relationship and deal with the dynamics of that while navigating the 32nd century? I mean, we don't have to kill the goddamn guy.
Yeah, but it's a really lovely natural moment, and I think the whole relationship between Book and Michael has been very organic throughout the season. They've put enough scenes in there that we can see the development of that, which can be juxtaposed to maybe the Adira Gray relationship, which I know a lot of people have had problems with, because we've not had enough screen time to maybe care about them. I mean, I quite like what they've done with that, but I'm not as invested because I haven't had that time to invest myself in those characters. But they've done a really nice progression with Book.
Agreed. Yeah, I think the contrast to the Adira Gray is a little glaring, frankly, because I think they're trying to ask audiences to hang a lot of emotional weight onto essentially like really one sequence in one episode, and a couple of sequences really, but basically just that episode is all the groundwork that was laid for that relationship, and everything else that's come after that we're being asked to care based on that, whereas the Michael Book dynamic has been developed organically since the very first episode of the season.
Admiral Vance piecing it all together is a really cool scene. My man Oded Fair out here was always way too smart to be tricked by this little plan that Osira has, and I'm glad we got to see that moment of realization, right? Like, it also removes the element of surprise that Osira had. So if she did have any plans to come in guns hot, that's shot to hell now, because Starfleet HQ is on red alert. All the other starships there are, they're pointing their guns directly at the Discovery, ready to neutralize the threat that Osira poses. And it's rare that we get to see these moments of realization on screen where it turns, and you're always at the point of view of the hero character, like, Michael Burnham, or we're at the point of view of the villain, getting ready to turn to the next phase of their plan. And if Osira did have another plan,
yeah, and it does speak to, she probably does at the very least want, she wants peace, and she does want it on her terms, though. That's very clear. But she never even raises the idea of like blowing up the warp core, for example, to destroy to deal a crippling fatal blow to the Federation. It's never even on the table.
Right.
Which I think speaks to her true motivations and what she really wants. She's not she's not some, radical terrorist idealist, who's bent on, the destruction of the Federation at all costs. Like she wants peace, and she just wants it on her very, very narrow terms. She doesn't want to face up to the consequences of her actions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to kind of gush a bit, but I think Oded Frere does his best work in this episode. It's the most Vance we've had, isn't it, really, in this episode? And he gets some cracking material. I love, and what I love about it is the consistency in writing, because when we first met him and the crew of Discovery first encountered him, he was a very, very suspicious man. He was very cautious and very suspicious, and that serves him really well in this opening quarter of the episode, because he is he's asking for the traptor beam to secure the ship. He's asking for a fully armed security unit. So whatever's happening, he's not completely trusting of what's happening, and that cautious, suspicious nature really pays off. And it was put there in the first few episodes when we met him.
Yeah, Vance has been very consistent throughout the season, really, with only a couple of blips on the radar, which I think might have been, sort of misdirections to make us think that maybe he's not all on the up and up. Yeah. But I think it's just showing through that he's a really solid guy who isn't perfect and is justifiably suspicious, and it pays off. And is a guy who remains true to, at least his understanding of Federation ideals.
Yeah, that plays out really well later on in the episode. So Book gets captured, and he joins the rest of the crew in the ready room, where he slyly lets Tilly know that Michael is still out there, right? And this kind of sets the stage a little bit for Tilly as she's formulating a plan. And I can only imagine how guilty and awful Tilly feels, getting the ship captured the first time she takes the chair. At this point, I guess the win will only come for her in making sure that none of her crew members get killed at the very least. She tries to get the henchmen to keep only her and let everybody else go, but, they're like, no, you're all staying right here. So she clearly wants an opportunity to prove herself, not only to her crew, who's right there with her, but also to Captain Saru and to Admiral Vance, presumably later on. It's a nice little setup here where, as the viewer, we can frame what's going to happen next, right? Like, the inevitable breakout scene is coming.
Sure. Yeah, and after Book gets dropped off at daycare, we see Burnham start the takedown process of one of Osara's men. She gets a little stabbed in the leg in the process, but
it's not without consequence, sure.
Nope. And of course, we get the bloody trail that she leaves behind.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from, with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere, and each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
We know that it's it's only a matter of time until they find her, and we get a Jeffrey's tube sequence. It wouldn't be a Starship Mine / Die Hard reference episode without someone crawling through some Jeffrey's tubes.
Yeah, and she also has the Emerald Chain communicator as she's crawling around, so she's able to listen in on their comms.
She is, and as well as do whatever else those things can do. They seem to be able to do a lot.
Yeah.
She while she's in the tube, she sends off a message to her mother, which was a little bit of a surprise, maybe setting up an appearance for the finale. Don't know. It was a sort of Mayday / goodbye message, so it could have just been for that emotional beat. Don't really know, but I suspect we're being set up for something there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be a little clue, a little prelude to maybe her mum coming to the rescue in some way, maybe with a small force behind her.
Maybe the Vulcans arrived to save the day. Vulcans, Romulans arrived to save the day.
Yeah.
I could imagine something like that, a show of, okay, like this is the proof that we didn't cause the burn because we literally found the origin, and Vulcans and Romulans are going to join with the Federation to stand up against the Emerald Chain. You can sort of see it going in that direction if they go in that direction.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be a nice narrative conclusion, I think, from Unification 3. And I hope it's done well if it happens.
Yeah, it's absolutely a setup for last minute reinforcements to arrive. And, whether it's led by Gabrielle Burnham or Will Riker's descendants remains to be seen.
Yeah, would be nice to see a Riker Troy descendant somehow pop in to save the day just for the sake of continuity.
Every Star Trek finale needs the Titan.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, right. The USS Titan F or whatever it would be at this point. I will say I'm a little miffed by this scene where she can send an encrypted message to her mom over on Vulcan, but she doesn't think to call Admiral Vance. Maybe like she doesn't try and get a hold of anyone else, or
it was a little unclear. What the deal with the comms was. Like, is she successfully getting a message out? That was unclear to me. Like, is she just sending it into the ether, and whenever the shields go down or whenever the comms open back up, like it'll go out then? Like, I was a little unclear exactly what the comms situation that she was tapping into was, but
Yeah, it was a little bit of a hand-wavy movement because as far as I understood, I thought all comms were blocked.
That was my understanding.
In some way or form, so I think that was a little bit hand-wavy, but I'm okay with it. It's a little blip in this great episode for me, so I'm not gonna stamp on it.
Yeah, maybe it's one of those things where, as soon as the comms stop being jammed, then the message gets sent.
True.
Yeah, and maybe she's able to get through the Emerald Chain blocking system with the Emerald Chain comm badge. Who knows?
Could be.
But it goes out there, presumably, at some point. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see that called back in the finale.
I think she says it's a subspace frequency, so maybe if that gets around the blocks somehow, it's all very vague, but
it is.
I think at the time, because of the propulsion of the episode, we don't really stop to think about it.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's twice this episode they kind of just say subspace and wave their hands, and we just sort of accept it. It's fine.
She is able to use the Emerald Chain comm badge, and she understands that there is Aurelio is in engineering with Stamets, so she knows where Paul is, and she hangs up the message to her mom, and she hangs up the communicator, and she's like, all right, here we go, Paul. I love that feeling of, all right, we got to get to this. Let's get on with the action. We had our emotional moment. We said our goodbyes. Let's go save the day.
And it's really good to see Burnham having a big picture perspective, because she's been very personal in a lot of her decisions throughout this season and the previous 2 seasons as well. She's been quite an emotionally impulsive person and has made decisions that may have not been the best. But in this, she has the big picture. She has to get Stamets off the ship. That is the priority over everything.
She really does. And we're going to talk about this later, but it really comes to a head.
Yeah.
It does, and a very believable one, even if, a little bit of a shade of kind of what we were feeling at the end of last week's episode of, oh man, it's a little tough to swallow for Michael sometimes, because she has, which again, like, if they laid a little bit of groundwork of like, hey, like, I have learned from my mistakes, like I've learned from the tragic consequence of what happens when I just go off and do whatever I want without thoughts to the bigger picture. But the problem is she so rarely faces the consequences of those actions, that this kind of change in perspective is it's welcome, but it's also a little. It doesn't 100% pass the smell test for me. Just when I'm looking at like all the evidence that we've seen kind of on screen up to this point.
Sure. I'm gonna ask you to hold your thoughts on that, because once we get to that scene, we're probably gonna discuss a lot of it.
Totally.
Yeah. So Syra calls in. This negotiations is set up, right? So she's going to be joining Admiral Vance at Starfleet headquarters in his ready room. And, I said it earlier. I personally love this twist on the big shootout finale. It's a welcome change. Maybe in the grand finale, we'll get some starship shooting at each other action sequences. But the Federation president is supposed to be in Federation headquarters, right? So, it's interesting to me that the Federation president says, you know what? I'm not going to meet with the Emerald Chain representative. Admiral Vance can take care of it. I'm not going to legitimize, her presence here.
That's definitely a take on it. Do we think the Federation president actually exists? Because I'm becoming more convinced that not that Vance is a bad guy, but that he might have a lot more control over the day-to-day operations of the Federation than we've been led to believe. Because he says when she comes on board that he has been authorized to negotiate the release of Disco and her crew. That is it. He only says he's been authorized to negotiate the release of Disco and her crew. Once the fate of millions of lives and dozens of systems and cultures is at stake during these peace negotiations, why isn't he calling up the civilian government? It's crazy to me.
Yeah, you think he'd kick that up the chain a bit.
Yeah. Check in. What are you doing? Unless there's no one to check in with.
Yeah, I'm definitely siding with your line of thinking here, and I don't think there is a civilian government.
Okay.
Because, we've got the most fragmented version of the Federation, and we know that they don't know what's been going on in other parts of the galaxy, because they don't have the ability to go that far, and all these deep space stations that the Emerald Chain is kind of taken advantage of. But I think there's a lot of facade with Vance, and I think he's the only one really calling the shots.
I wouldn't be surprised to learn that's the case at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I'm holding out hope that there is some kind of civilian government in play here, trying to manage what everything is doing. But as has been the case with past Star Trek shows, Starfleet has really been the only game of town that we've really dealt with. Sure. At least, I think the difference is that usually when we see other shows, we're far away from Federation HQ. We're far away from the heart of the Federation. We have admirals and captains on the frontier making tough calls, making unilateral decisions when they can't consult with Federation HQ or can't have, an emergency session of the Federation Council convened. But they're at Federation HQ now, presumably. So they're here. It should just be a matter of hey, this negotiation kind of got way out of hand, in terms of my mandate. We should loop you guys in. Sure.
The fact that that's not even mentioned, I don't know. It raised some, alarms for me that maybe the Federation isn't quite as extant as we assumed it was.
And if you think about the hostility they've had from other planets when they went to Earth, when they went to Navarre, they weren't greeted very nicely. So yeah. I don't know what the whole bigger picture is with the Federation, and whether I don't know. They think they're doing the right thing, but who knows?
Right. It's just, to me, it adds a little bit more texture to the situation, which I appreciate. So yeah, we get a quick, revisit to the ship where, the bridge crew rebellion is getting started. Reese and Bryce are tapping their guards right into a trap. The whole bridge crew gangs up on these two guards because they are able to lure them in close to negate their weapons, and the takeover begins.
Yeah, it's a great use of the ensemble here, and it took Book by surprise, which I really liked. You know, something about the bridge crew impressing Michael's boyfriend made me chuckle here.
Yeah, definitely.
Book is he's kind of used as a stand-in for the audience of a 32nd century person seeing Starfleet for the first time. And he's really come to admire the crew and their bravery, and having it continue to pay off visually is a good way to build on that character. Like, he's always been very enthusiastic, around Michael, but as he came on the Discovery, he was a little bit hesitant. He didn't want to wear the uniform. And now all of a sudden he's asking Captain Saru, like, hey, how can I help? How can I do more? How can I do this? And it seems like, you know, he's really becoming one of those true believers.
Yeah, you know, long way from the first episode where he's, you know, sees the Starfleet insignia and he says, you know, you believe in ghosts. Not only is the Federation and Starfleet very much real, but they kick ass. Yeah,
I think this is really good fun. I like the fact that they're Morse coding to each other, just keep tapping. That's all they're saying to each other, which is quite funny.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And a little side mouth that Tilly does is great. And I think Tilly's her position's interesting because we just alluded to it earlier that, you know, she's made a fatal mistake because the ship's been taken over, but her resolve really shows in these scenes because she's acting like a captain has to, and you know, she's giving orders and she's looking after her crew. You know, that's her priority is keep the crew safe. So I really like her character and the way she's kind of dealing with the situation.
Yeah, and you know, contrast how she's responding to this understandable but genuine failure, and how she reacted to, you know, she embarrassed herself slightly in front of Pike in the second season and was like, that's it, I'm resigning from the trainee program, I'm out. I'm not cut out to be a captain. A lot of growth for that character, which is really welcome to see. I really like season 3 Tilly.
Yeah, I know a lot of folks have taken her to task with being the acting first officer, and especially with this, you know, as you put it, a fatal mistake being made. It gives Tilly quite a bit to do to redeem herself, and I think that's coming for her.
So back at Federation HQ, Vance and Osira are beginning this negotiation with a holographic lie detector named Eli. She starts off by needling Vance about how easy it was to take over the ship, but he's really not having it. He wants her to get to the point. And the point, according to Osira, is that she wants peace. She proposes that the Emerald Chain unites with the Federation to form a new Federation. And I don't know about you guys, I really liked this turn in the story. You know, I sort of alluded to earlier that I thought it's much more interesting, than some sort of shootout confrontation with the Federation here, which, you know, we're probably going to get next week anyway. But yeah, I did not see this hard push for peace, coming from her. I really liked that turn.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is the scene really. All this negotiating scene was where I kind of, sat up and pay attention to Osira, because instead of being this kind of mobster character, she's a political figure, and she's negotiating a treaty to kind of benefit her people and her society and her culture, trying to make her culture verified in the Federation's eyes, which is a big thing that she kind of pushes forward to that. But I find it very interesting. I really find Vance and Osira very interesting characters here, because they're ultimately looking for the same thing, but certain words mean something completely different to them. Like peace. Peace means something very different to Vance than it does to Osira. Justice means something very different from Vance as it does to Osira. So these conversations that they have, even though they're talking to each other, they want peace, but they want something completely different at the same time. They're kind of laying demands that neither of them will agree to, and I like this dynamic. And just a shout out to Eli as well for any X-Files X-Cast fans. Brendan Beiser is the actor's name, who was in X-Files for quite some time.
Nice. Yeah, it's a funny take on the lie detector here. I'm curious, what do you guys think? Do you think that Osira is being, I know this is maybe jumping.
Okay, round 2. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right. ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18 plus.
Jumping ahead a bit, do you think Osiris being honest? Or do you think she has found a way, like Giorgio apparently found a way to blink holograms out of existence? Do you think that Osira and her, you know, vast scientific resources have found a way to trick this lie detector?
There's a moment, isn't there, when Vance is reading the treaty and she starts talking about the, you know, Eli and how facial movements and everything kind of tell if someone's lying. I think she has some way of maybe evading Eli's sensors in some way, because I think that little conversation she has is very a concealed way of saying things.
Yeah, there's a lot being said by not saying certain things, and Osira kind of tips that hand a little bit to the audience. She maybe fools Vance, but it's hard to say, and I think it leaves it open to interpretation enough where we can say, like, oh, okay, you know, maybe Osira does know some way to trip up to trip up Eli, but maybe she's just not that good at it. Like, you know, you have to practice it. You know, maybe Giorgio is just, you know, leagues above who Osira is in terms of being a villain, right? Where she can automatically figure out, like, oh, this is how I get rid of a hologram. But for Osira, she needs all those scientific institutions in order to figure out how to even access a hologram's internal coding.
Yeah, and you know, Luke, I think you mentioned earlier that she had this sense of this being a very rehearsed plan for her. She had this all laid out, and it's really sort of when the conversation gets to, like, okay, fine, let's say I grant you all the, everything that's in this. Like, once we actually get to, you know, the Emerald Chain coming to the table in a more formal way, like, who's going to represent them? Because it can't be you. And that's when things go south for her. That's the first time she gets caught out in a lie, at least out loud, where she says that anyone that the Emerald Chain sends, like, won't be just a proxy for her. And she's like, no, of course they'll be totally independent. And she lies, and Eli calls her out for it. And then she says, she turns her back to Eli and is like, wait, let me try again. And yeah, that was one of those moments for me that made me wonder, like, is she doing something? Like, is she doing something, or is she actually telling the truth when she says she wants peace? I really liked it was a good kind of ambiguity in this scene that they established. I thought, because it just gives us fodder for these kinds of conversations. I really enjoyed the whole way this was constructed.
I don't think that Osira is capable of thinking past maybe steps 2 or 3, whereas Vance, by contrast, is able to look at steps 9, 10, 12, and on and on. And this really speaks to the difference in ideology and how Osira views herself possibly as a liberator, right? She liberated the Discovery spore drive and, you know, is going to help the galaxy by giving it, you know, to the people, right? And there is some, I would say, some misguided notion of heroism that she has, where she sees herself as the good guy. And that's why she doesn't want to be brought to justice for her crimes, because they weren't crimes, because look at all the good things she brought to her people of the chain. You know, yeah, you know, she had to squash quite a few other people to bring that goodness, but the ends justify the means here. And for her, that's all that matters.
Right. And for her, it's enough to say, you know, to wave your hands over the many crimes, that she is guilty of, and say, well, you know, that's all in the past. That doesn't matter. It matters a lot to the many, many people who are affected by her actions. It matters a lot to the notion of a galaxy or to a government that wants to present credibly the notion of justice to the galaxy at large, to people who are potentially going to join your federation. It's a tough pill to swallow that like the, this mass murderer, like space Hitler type. I know I've used that analogy to describe Georgiou, but, but she's a mass murderer. She's a villain. She's a capital V villain. And that's clear. And the fact that the idea of her suffering any kind of personal setback, in order to pursue this greater peace, that's reprehensible to her. She can't conceive of a world where she has to actually say, yep, I did that thing and it wasn't right. So she blows the whole thing up.
Mm-hmm. There's that line, isn't there, that Vance says, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but he says that the past is the light that shines to the future, or something like that. And he's refusing to let what has gone on before, he's saying we can't have a clean slate and go forward with this treaty that you're presenting, because your past actions have tarnished and blackened the past so much that there is no light shining to the future, essentially. And the only way that door can be opened is if she's removed from the picture in the first place.
Right. And it has to be about her, clearly. Like if the Emerald Chain is this, and this is where not having the world built out kind of comes to bite them a bit in the butt, storytelling wise. But if the Emerald Chain is actually this legitimate government entity, whatever the word legitimate means, but let's say there's an actual government. We learned in this episode there's apparently a constitution that can be amended. Great. So presumably there's some sort of government, because she says she expended a lot of political capital. Well, then why wasn't there like an ambassador sent to Federation HQ with this treaty in hand? Like, if it's such a good deal, why did it have to come from her? And why did she have to point a gun at the Federation's head and say, negotiate with me or else? Because that's the thing. She's engaging in gunboat diplomacy. She's basically sailing into a harbor and, pointing the guns at the government, of the local, the local country and saying, hey, good news. We're here we've got this great offer. You're going to love it. You're going to love the terms we have. It's a really generous offer. Never mind all these guns pointed at you. It's a really great offer. It's really generous. You're going to love all the concessions we're making. Again, please ignore all the guns that are being pointed at you. Please. I encourage you to ignore them. It's not in good faith. And Vance recognizes that.
Well, I think there is some context also given, and the scene is played for laughs, but when the food is brought out and Osyra takes a bite of the apple and they have a discussion surrounding the apple, and Admiral Vance, opens the door for everybody and says, it's made of our shit. They process all the waste into waste reclamation and reconstitute the atoms. So all food that they're eating is being made out of shit. So it really speaks to the supplies, and how these logistic supply lines are interrupted. The Federation, Starfleet, here they are. They're out in the middle of space. There's no planets. Sure, I'm sure that they do have like a hydroponics ship. We did see the giant rainforest vessel in episode 5. So things are underway, but supplies are likely thin for the Federation, so they use what they have. And, they're very isolated. Ships are doing occasional missions to nearby sectors, delivering supplies to various planets. But the Emerald Chain's mercantile exchanges have real foods. They have actual planets that they can go to. And I'm sure it must be enticing, but it really speaks to the two different ideals here, since the Emerald Chain is really oppressing others for that, quote, real food. And I think Osyra is really overestimating what the Federation will do for those resources.
Maybe she's overestimating what they'll do for the sort of luxury goods. I think she certainly makes the point because she doesn't yet know what kind of pressures are going to work on Vance. She's never met him before. She doesn't know what kind of man he is. So I think she's trying some different tacks to see if that sort of appeals to him. He shuts her down. I love how he's like, it's pretty good for shit.
Yeah.
And like she kind of spits a bit of it out of her mouth. It's great. It's great. And it ties to, what Aurelio, says to Stamets. He alludes to, when they're talking about tardigrade DNA, and Stamets says like, we're unable to replicate it. Like we can't replicate the spore drive because we can't replicate this DNA, and Aurelio alludes to, some Orion biotech that they have where they're going to grow the tardigrade cells. It sounds sort of like cloning. They're going to clone the cells, with a higher degree of fidelity than the Federation's replicator technology is able to achieve. And I think that's probably what she's talking about. She's talking about that they've got some engineered method of growing food on a larger scales to where it's available, or at the very least it's available to the elite like Osira, which is of course something, that they don't go into. Osira's like, oh yeah, you should try an apple. They're great. The Emerald Chain has tons of apples. I bet she has a ton of apples. I bet the average person in their territory does not have a ton of apples in their diet.
Yeah, those scenes really bring a very fascinating notion to the table, whereby the Federation, for as long as we can remember, since TOS and TNG, capitalism has been not in their culture. There's no reason for wealth or personal gain. And it's interesting now that the possibility that the only way the Federation can actually flourish and bloom is to join with the Emerald Chain and adapt to capitalism. It's a really interesting notion that they've survived for so long in this culture without wealth and money, and now it looks like there's a possibility that it is the only way that they can actually flourish. Yeah, and
the whole capitalism versus socialism debate in Star Trek is always a little wonky because Star Trek posits a post-scarcity society where traditional pressures about resource scarcity driving competition, that dynamic is gone. So in some ways it's interesting that she kind of wants to drag them back into a past that's even farther in the past than the 23rd century. This notion that they have, maybe post-burn, we've been reintroduced to a society with scarcity. Arguably, dilithium certainly is scarce. So the dynamics, in terms of that debate have changed, and I think she recognizes that. She's making a pitch. I think the most compelling part of her pitch is that the Emerald Chain has considerable scientific resources that the Federation doesn't have, which is new information, but it's interesting, and that she's convinced that they can replicate spore drive tech and usher in a new era of prosperity for the galaxy. And that's a compelling argument. Debating what you want to call their financial infrastructure is kind of moot at that point, because what they're talking about is, ending this new dynamic that the burn introduced and going back to a society that is more post scarcity.
Right. And I think that speaks a little bit again to Osira being so one-dimensional in her thinking, where she only knows one way of life. She only knows how to oppress and use capital and how to make these exchanges happen, and how to use money and wealth and power. Whereas, she's meeting the Federation. Essentially, she knows of them. She knows maybe their ideals and the values. But as far as we can tell, she's meeting Vance for the first time. Right? So this whole dynamic that shakes out, she's thinking my way or the highway. My way is the right way. And she's not even considering what Admiral Vance, his ideals, his values, his morals are. So this is very much a mirror of our current era that we're going through, where you have so many people and, rightly or wrongly, you have so many people out there who are saying, hey, we need to, For the U.S., we need a public healthcare option. We need socialized medicine. Health is public, so make healthcare public instead of privatizing it. But our country has done things one way for so long that it's hard to get away from that. And it's hard to pivot and move. And unless you have enough people saying, I want this change, and we're willing to fight for it, then how is that really going to happen? And I think that's what Osyraa is kind of presenting. It's this old way of thinking. Her way of thinking is so one-dimensional that she can't actually talk to Vance about it. And when that page gets flipped and he says, well, listen, we would consider this provided that, there's a person who is not attached to you and won't be your mouthpiece. And as long as you're willing to stand trial for your crimes, then we would consider this. And she immediately gets up and walks out.
Yeah, the minute it doesn't involve anyone else making sacrifice, she's fine making all the concessions that he asks for of like other members of the Emerald Chain giving up their slaves, other members of the Emerald Chain giving up these 50 pre-war planets that they're exerting influence over. Like she has a detailed 15-year plan to withdraw from all those anything under the sun she's willing to give. She says she's in a very generous mood because none of it involves her making a personal sacrifice. And the minute it does, admittedly, it's a tough ask. I get it, because she would be going on trial. I mean, the Federation doesn't have the death penalty, so she wouldn't lose her life, but she would potentially lose her freedom for the rest of it. Because of the crimes she actually committed. Again, the notion that she just wants to wave her hand and pretend like she isn't a mass murderer, she has to realize on some level that the Federation was never going to agree to that. But she doesn't, because in her mind, that's entirely outside of her frame of reference. She can't conceive of someone else, putting their ideas about justice and truth above what's expedient.
Right. But there is something that happens outside of this negotiation room that kind of kicks things into high gear for them. Michael Burnham is still crawling through the Jeffries tubes, and she kind of gets busted. They figure out that one of their regulators has gone missing, and they track down that comm badge. They find that comm badge in the Jeffries tube. So Zara is kind of playing the evil villain here, where he's on the horn and he says, we're going to find you, we're going to get you. And he sends off his henchmen to kind of trap Burnham where she is. And while it kind of does work, there's a fight inside the Jeffries tube. Burnham gets pretty intense and actually spaces one of the henchmen. And this is when she loses her shoes.
It's the elevator shaft scene. Die Hard. It's their version of it. There's a strap that's slowly tearing, and we don't know if she's going to fall or not. She does fall, but luckily the tube shuts before she's vented out into space. It works. It's a good bit of fun, and it's quite. And even though we know Michael's not going to die, it's a really tense scene.
Yeah, and it's the overt Die Hard references, with the, she's barefoot, her foot's bleeding, come on.
And Vance and Osyraa see this happen too. Sensors pick it up and they both see it, and Vance understands that something's going on Discovery, and the crew is fighting back. So I'm also wondering how much, and you guys tell me what you think, how much of Vance playing into Osyraa's negotiation is him biding time, and how much of it is legitimate? Thoughts?
At this point, I think it's an open question. Again, a really an additional layer to this whole negotiation scene that was really welcome. It's definitely in the back of my head that she's clearly, Vance must have picked up on it because the audience certainly did, that she's like, okay, let's hurry this up. Once she realizes that some shit's going down, she's like, okay, let's move this right along, because she knows that she's only ever going to be in as strong a negotiating position as this one. And so it's vital that she gets this is the best and only shot she's going to have at this. She wants this plan to work. Even if she does genuinely want peace, regardless, this is the strongest negotiating position she's ever going to find herself in. She has to make it happen right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting moment when they both find out what's going on and discover it. And I think it's at that point that her rehearsal is derailed. This was not meant to happen as quick, and she's having to kind of put away steps 4, 5, and 6 and go straight to step 7, which is here's the treaty. I want you to sign it. So from that point, I think she's kind of ad-libbing. She's making it up as she goes along, and I think Vance sees that, and he is definitely buying time at that point.
Yeah, there's a distinct tonal shift. So checking in with Stamets and Aurelio, I really enjoyed the banter between these two characters. They are scientists first, soldiers last. Back in season 1, one of our earliest lines of dialogue from Stamets was, "We're explorers, not soldiers," in protest to Captain Lorca's orders. And there's a nice bit of narrative build and character development where this comes back to us a little bit. And Stamets opens up emotionally here, talking about Hugh and Adira as his family. And I think I'm not sure who mentioned it in the Discord, if it was you, Ian, or Luke, but it may have been possible that Stamets was somewhat embellishing the truth because he sees that Aurelio has children of his own marked by these piercings he has behind his ear.
Yeah, when I watch the scene again, I'm 100% sure that's what he's doing. Make no mistake, he for sure is starting to view Adira as his child and part of the family, but that clearly is not a conversation that's actually been had with Adira yet. So, that, be that as it may, Stamets, I think, has a lot of genuine feeling. I think that groundwork of that relationship has been well laid up to this point. I believe him when he says that he feels as if he has a child. And I think he's just saying, I have a child too. Like he spots these piercings behind Aurelio's ear, indicating that the man has children. And Stamets says, gets him talking about his family and says, yeah, children are a blessing. I have one of my own and a partner, both of whom I'm worried about. Like he goes right into I have a family too. I'm worried about them. I'm a hostage in a hostage crisis. Please see me as a human being. Right. That's the subtext of what he's saying there. There might be other subtext as well. But that is, I think, the primary. I think that is the first layer of subtext in the scene for me, is that he's trying to get Aurelio onto his side.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of my favourite scenes in the entire episode. It is layered with subtext and layered with different things going on. One of them, I think, is both Stamets and Aurelio have an idealised version of their particular relationship with their people. So Aurelio has an idealized version of who Asira is. She's his savior. And he talks about when he was 10 years old and, she helped him and with all the scientific, kind of equipment that they can use to help him with his disability. And then you got Stamets, who's got this idealized version of a family. Now, we, the viewers, may not necessarily think that Stamets has any right to call Adira his child, but in his head, he is forming a family unit with Hugh and Adira, and I believe that he believes that.
Yes.
So even if I don't believe it myself, I believe that he believes it. So that's a really nice subtext in that scene. And also, as you said, Stamets is trying to identify with his captor. It's the whole hostage captor thing, isn't it? He's trying to keep the conversation away from the spore drive and more about family and trying to identify with family that way. So it's such a good scene and so well written. And this is Anthony Rapp's strongest performance to date. He is superb in this.
Yes. Agreed.
Yes. I kept thinking to myself how I probably would have appreciated more scenes of Hugh, Adira, and Stamets together. Even if they were just in the background eating in the mess hall, or if we had a pivotal scene of the three of them sharing quarters together, that would have gone a long way for me to believe that Stamets really does feel this super close connection, because right now it just seems like a little bit of a mentorship aspect going on.
Yeah, have a conversation about whether you actually want, at least lay the groundwork with Hugh. They've already started to talk. He's already started to talk to Hugh about Adira and his growing fondness for her and that growing relationship. Have a couple more of those scenes. I really liked those scenes when they happened. Throw a couple more in there between then and now. Build that groundwork a little bit more organically. And, but that said, his performance in this episode is fantastic. And when he says that, his life is in that nebula to burn him a little bit later, like that really
you believe it.
Yeah, they believe it. It is one, like I 100% believe in his head version of what's going on as far as their dynamic is concerned. I just wish that it was built out on screen a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think the writers of Discovery have, one of their problems is that they've wanted to pack so many different plot threads in and make all these characters have their moments. It sometimes just works to the detriment of the season that these storylines get a little left behind. We're only given a scene here or there throughout the series, and it doesn't help our investment in those characters. So going forward, I think I would like to see the writers maybe just focus on fewer stories so they can really make it a strong narrative and really good writing. I just think sometimes they stretch themselves a little bit, trying to do too much. I applaud them for that, but sometimes it just falls flat on certain little points and certain little characters.
It does.
Yeah, Luke, I like the way that you put it, though, earlier, wherein Stamets may have been feeling this way and maybe just didn't vocalize it with Hugh or Adira, but now that he's faced with being chained up in front of, this mad scientist type person, in Aurelio, now he's seeing, these are the emotions that I feel. I feel these very strongly right now, especially considering my situation, and I'm verbalizing them for the first time.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. I mean, even though, as you say, we haven't had much Stamets, Adira, and Hugh family unit time. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I believe Anthony Rapp. I believe Stamets when he says that I have a child.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting here how Aurelio pivots the conversation back to the spore drive and tells Stamets, like, hey, the tardigrade DNA that controls the spore drive, sure, tardigrades have gone extinct and can't be replicated, but, we can grow the tardigrade cells. And this is an interesting bit. Again, we've talked about it earlier, where the Emerald Chain has these scientific institutions. So I wonder if they really do have this technology, or if it's something that's experimental that they don't actually have yet. And this leads in later where we have to get Stamets off the ship, because he's the only one who can pilot the Discovery right now.
Yeah. He is the spore drive, so she basically needs to. It's like ejecting the warp core. It's very analogous to ejecting the warp. She is ejecting the jump drive core in the form of Stamets.
Interesting turn of events where when the bridge crew escaped their confinement, Book and the Andorian Rin, who's been on board this whole time, by the way, the Andorian Rin have stayed behind to kind of head off all the regulators and the henchmen. I think they knew that they were going to be captured, but they knew that they were buying time, which really works out well. Zara has captured Book and the Andorian Rin, and Osira returns to the Discovery once Admiral Vance has kind of given his whole, like, hey, listen, unless you're going to stand trial, we are not interested. And she storms off, right? She's back aboard the Discovery. She walks onto the bridge. Zara has Book and the Andorian there, and she's clearly very comfortable as the villain and falls into this character line perfectly. Aurelio and Osira, what do you guys think? They seem to be, again, this friendship that seems to have paid off, this relationship that they have. Do you think that they are the ones who are together? Because Aurelio refers to his partner being Orion.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Hadn't occurred to me. It could be. I don't think so. I didn't quite get that dynamic from them, but it is an interesting one. I think it's clear that they have she has this relationship with him that goes a bit beyond being a patron, but also it doesn't, right? She exerts I said earlier that she uses different methods of control for different people. She uses whatever works. On a man like Aurelio, it's I'm going to be generous. He's going to interpret my charity as I'm a good person at heart, because he has grown up in this Emerald Chain society where all the evidence is to the contrary, and he would have been discarded were it not for her personal charity. And it's also thematically a tie to, like, the Emerald Chain is if it's a government at all, it's one in which those left behind by society need to depend on charity. in order to advance and survive even, rather than a society like the Federation where those who are born in a situation like Aurelio's would be supported by the society at large.
Right.
And so I think Aurelio, in addition to the fact that he's clearly been kept in the dark about what Osyra is really like, I think, he's got this kind of twisted patron relationship with her, which is she has allowed him to feel as if it is something more. But when it really comes down to it, I don't think she really cares about this person. I don't think she really cares about anyone but herself.
Yeah, it's interesting when she strolls onto the bridge, Aurelio immediately says, "I failed you, Osyra." So there's this immediate cowing to her. There is this twisted patron relationship going on. And I think you're right. I don't think Osyra really cares about him that much. And that's evident by the way that she just goes about her normal twisted business with him present because he refuses to leave. And I like the way that he refuses to leave because it means that Stamets' words have got to him. He's starting to believe that maybe she isn't all she is.
Yeah, during the whole scene with Stamets and Aurelio, Aurelio was kind of trying to convince Stamets, like, hey, Osyra, she's nice, she's generous, and maybe has to make hard choices, but he says, she is more than you're making her out to be. And Stamets replies, and I love the reply, to be honest with you, I believe you when you say she's more than I'm making her out to be, but I also think she's exactly who she is.
Yeah, it's reminiscent of that Maya Angelou quote, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Like, sure, there's maybe more to her than just being a mustache twirling villain. I think that makes her a lot more compelling. And we see that in the sequence with Vance, that she's more than met the eye initially. I buy that. But she's also, like I said earlier, like, she is a capital V villain. Like, she is not a force for good in the universe, regardless of how you want to frame her actions.
Right. If you remember, Book's planet, Quaijan, they have these, they have this infestation, right? And the Emerald Chain, Osyra provided a pesticide. And Aurelio says, hey, that was a triumph. That was a scientific feat for us. But what he didn't know until Stamets told him was that they only provided that pesticide in exchange for the trance worms to be hunted to extinction, because they are a delectable treat. Right. And this is the first time Aurelio's hearing this, and you can see in his face, like, interesting.
Right. First that he's hearing of it, really. And his initial response is like, I'm sure you misunderstand the situation. I forget exactly how he says it, but his initial thing is no, I'm sure the situation was more complicated than that, because of course that's exactly how she's probably had to recontextualize things that he's heard about her in the past. You can just imagine that she has had this conversation with her, he's had this conversation with her, some version of it where he says to her, like, hey, I heard that this thing happened, and she explains it away by recontextualizing it in a way that makes her look like the good guy.
Of course, I'm sure
she does.
I'm sure she's got 32nd century Twitter and hashtag fake news every story about herself. Yeah.
Were you guys shocked when she blew Rin away?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. I did not see that coming.
I was disappointed. I was like, I kind of like that guy. That's too bad. You feel for him. But it also does, it needed to happen, because I think we actually, at least on the first watch, like, I came out of that negotiation with Vance thinking like, damn it, they were so close. Like, maybe they could have worked something out. Like, should Vance have had unilateral ability to say no to her about something like that when the stakes were so high? But then, she comes right back on the bridge and murders someone, and you're like, oh no, they never could have made this work with her. Not really. I don't think so. Yeah. Not with her. And that was the point at which she couldn't. That was the point which she couldn't budge on. It had to be they deal with her or a proxy, and she has to suffer no consequences for her actions. She just wants too much for herself,
and it shows her her complete short-sightedness of the whole situation, and the fact that she's had to ad-lib the situation because it was beyond the steps that she'd done. And it also brings back that her version of justice is very different to the Federation's version of justice, which is why I don't think this in inverted commas peace would ever really work, because Osira is as you say a villain with a capital V, and her shooting Rin is just is the calling card of her villainy.
Yeah, Rin stands up to Osira, and this is more real, true Starfleet believer inspiration, in my opinion, and it really plays off well, considering Rin has mostly been, I guess, maybe a little bit afraid and a little bit concerned for what Osira can do, considering she chopped off his antennae, and he's standing up to her here, and it plays out really well where he's kind of changing the dynamic of the situation. Because if you notice, the camera pans to Aurelio, who's there, and he sees everything that's going on. And when Book explains to Osira, hey, listen, I can take you to this planet full of dilithium. You don't need to kill Rin. Osira looks around, and she looks directly at Aurelio, who kind of nods, like, yes, back down. It's okay. It's going to be okay. But Osira turns up that capital V villain, Ian, and blows him away anyway.
Yeah. Which, it's hard not to imagine that coming to bite her in the ass with Aurelio.
Mm-hmm. I hope it does. I hope we get a scene in the finale where maybe Aurelio is the one who has the MacGuffin to save the day.
I'm sure there's going to be, he's going to have something to do with her demise.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
For sure. Michael has shoved Stamets into an emergency escape field after they have this blow up sequence of dialogue here, and everything with Stamets and Burnham was like, for me, watching it, I was glued. It was compelling. It was dramatic. And it really, as we discussed earlier, it really played into Burnham's emotional payoff here, where she's always making these decisions and putting everybody else at risk. But now she's making a decision for somebody else, where if it was her in the reverse, everybody would be rallying around her to help her. So I am conflicted, because in Star Trek we live by an important principle: the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, but you must always endeavor to protect the few, right? So I'm a little conflicted, because I agree with decisions made, but also that personal character moment, it's just rich coming from Burnham.
It is, which I think they make it work a little bit better than in the last episode, because Stamets immediately calls her on it. He says, look, if this was you, we already did the thing. We already came to the future for you, because of you personally. That wasn't we did it so that you wouldn't be here alone. We didn't all have to come. None of us did, really. Only the Spore Data needed to. We all did this for you for a personal reason. And he feels abandoned by her. And it betrayed. And I don't think that he's right. I think he's wrong. And spoiler alert, Zara gets the drop on Burnham 2 seconds after he gets ejected. So clearly it was necessary.
Right.
They were only Stamets was only seconds away from being recaptured. But yeah, it's brutal. And it is a little, just sort of in a meta sense, it's a little bit of a tough pill to swallow coming from Burnham all of a sudden. I wish that, again, the groundwork for that had been laid a little bit more explicitly. Cause I think it's a believable turn to say, hey, this character who has, suffered the negative consequences of her just going off on her own and doing whatever she wants without regard to the bigger picture. But she also needs to have faced, I think, a few more consequences for those, or that those lessons, I think, need to have been a little more explicit to completely, fully undergird this moment. But that said, it still works for me.
I agree. I was conflicted with it, but I do believe that she's done the right thing. What's interesting is, and this goes to how good the writing is for this episode and the previous one, is that both characters are right in their own way. Mm-hmm. Nobody's wrong. But he's desperate to save his family. So he's looking at a very personal picture, and Michael, as Richard is looking at the bigger picture. She thinks that she has to get rid of Stamets because he's the key to the spore drive being put into Osira's hands, and that's the immediate threat. And I think Vance would agree that from his point of view as well, that is what she should be doing.
Yeah, and she has no idea that Tilly and the gang have broken out and begun their takeover of this. She has no context. As far as she knows, she is the only person who is still free on this ship, and if the jump drive falls into Osira's hands, it'll be a disaster, and it'll mean the end of the Federation as we know it. Because once she is able to replicate this technology, or even if she isn't, even if she just has the discovery, she can wreak incredible havoc.
Yeah.
I mean, I think she can just jump into Federation HQ anytime she wants. Right? Like once she has the coordinates? I don't know how the shields work with the jump drive, but I mean, we've seen them jump out of Federation HQ, so I'm assuming that they
I was just
going to
say, we've seen them jump out, but we've not seen them jump back in.
Yeah, maybe it's an erroneous assumption, but I think for her, I think the stakes make sense. Like it would be the end of everything if Osira gets away with the jump drive, and as far as she knows, the only way to prevent that from happening is to space Stamets.
Right. But you have to think, like, is Michael actually right here? Because in her view, Osira wants to destroy the Federation. But I don't know if that's entirely true from what we've seen in this episode.
I don't think Michael knows exactly what her goal is, but she knows that the jump drive falling into Osira's hands is unacceptable because the goal is going to be corrupt.
Yes.
Regardless of what the actual, what the actual ends are. Like she knows who Osira is, what she's done with the technology she has had access to. And instead of using things like this wonderful pesticide that they invented for good, they use it to exploit and to exterminate. And the jump drive would be perverted in the same way. She knows that. Even if she doesn't have an exact idea of what the plan is for it, she knows that it's not good.
Yeah, the final moment between Michael and Stamets, I don't think there's I don't think that there's coming back from this, right? Like, regardless of the decision made and how right it is from one perspective or the other, I don't see Stamets forgiving Michael.
Yeah, I mean, one of my first thoughts was, the fallout of this particular moment is going to echo for a very long time into season 4, and I think I think their relationship is going to be something that it could be. I mean, we know how stubborn Paul Stamets is, and I think it's going to either take a very, very long time for that to heal, or it won't heal at all, and that would be a really interesting writing stance to go with. I think
it'll for sure never heal if one or the other of Adira or Hugh ends up dying. I haven't looked at the cast participation in season 4, so I don't know whether they're both back. But I think for Stamets, if he loses one of them, he's never going to forgive Michael. Not ever. That's just I think that's my instinct. But the writers might have a different idea of who that character is.
So, Luke, do you want to walk us through the final scene with the bridge crew taking the armory?
It's a nice little scene to end with. I've really enjoyed watching the bridge crew kind of get into the action a little bit this one, because they usually just basically sat or stood behind their control desk. So it's nice to see a bit of kind of dynamic movement through the ship with them. And they basically get armed up to the teeth. I like Tilly's comment, about we are going to go back to the bridge, and whoever falls, we are going to get there one way or the other. And I like that single-minded purpose. She's the captain; she has to get the crew's mindset into we have to take the ship back. So I really like that. And then we get our little 3 Wall-E trio,
the Dotbots.
Yeah, the Dotbots, he's now the Sphere Data, Zora.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful nod to the classic uniform scheme. The little LED rings around the Dot 23 sensors were red, yellow, and blue.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, pretty cool.
It's a really fun way to leave the episode hanging. That final line, "Shall we retake the ship, Captain?" As the camera zooms in on Tilly, tells me we're going to get a big redemption moment with her.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the way they call her Captain.
Yeah, and by extension, Saru, which I like.
Yeah. If we don't get plushies of the .23s, CBS, what are you guys doing?
Yeah. Get that merch.
They're definitely becoming the R2-D2s of the Trek universe, and man, I hope they lean hard into it.
I mean, they added them to the title sequence, so it makes sense that they're playing a more active role in the plot now.
Yeah.
Because they were just kind of there. Although, I mean, it's probably to set up this moment now. Like we've seen a couple of VFX shots of the dots at work in various areas of the ship, both inside and out. And now that they've been established as a presence on Discovery, we get to see them in action.
Yeah.
Retaking the ship.
So, gents, a lot happened in this episode. It was action-packed. It was tense. There was good bits of comic relief. It's definitely playing out like a movie, and I think everything we've seen thus far reinforces that. Did we miss anything?
Don't believe so.
What do you guys think is going to happen next week?
I'll do some very vague guessing, but I think that Burnham's mum may appear with a small Vulcan Romulan force behind her. That would be good to get those three characters back from Unification. It'd be nice to see them again. Especially due to, the hostility that they had towards Michael. It'd be nice to see a little closure or a little bit of continuation of that storyline. So it'd be nice to see them. I think we may I'm hoping we get more of a, explanation or some more about Zora and how she's evolved through the ship. That'd be good to get some of that as well. I think we might get a big space battle. I think there's definitely that on the cards as well.
It definitely seems like they're gearing up for a big space battle. I feel like it's inevitable. We haven't really gotten any real starship action in that way, aside from the shootout initially between Book's ship that was being piloted by Detmer and the Viridian. So remains to be seen. To your point, Luke, about calling Burnham's mom, it definitely seems as though, if you remember, her mom had joined the Co-op Malat, and their whole thing is absolute candor and will only join you if it's a lost cause. And I can't help but think, like, that distress call that Burnham made definitely sounded like, hey, listen, I'm probably gonna die. This is a lost cause. So I wonder if that's gonna ring any bells for the Co-op Malat to say, hey, we need to go out there and save the day.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Could be, yeah. The contextual, she sort of contextualized that Mayday with the, hey, I might die, so I'm going to say goodbye, which does sort of drive home that point of like, maybe this gets it past that threshold of lost cause that will inspire them to actually act. But that restriction really only applies to, her mom. Her mom just needs to get the word out once she gets that message. But I would be surprised if she didn't show up herself.
Yeah. As far as what else may happen next episode, I can honestly say that I'm going into this relatively blind, not only because I don't watch the trailers, because CBS All Access won't play them for whatever reason. When I watch the episode, it won't roll into the next thing. I have to go actually search for it, and if I gotta go search for it, come on now. But I've been relatively surprised by the way that episodes have been shaking out, and, not necessarily saying that my expectations were entirely subverted, but there have been nice changes from the usual pace that finale episodes of Star Trek have taken in this new era.
Totally. I guess I'll say what I'd like to see next week is for I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of pew 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 space battle. I would, like you said, Luke, like to learn a little bit more about Zora. Maybe like as we take over the ship, there's a little bit of exposition there. But I'd be surprised if we weren't going to wait until next season to get a little bit more about what's going on with that computer personality. I'd like to see Adira and maybe even Gray do something with their dynamic. Like I talked about this last week, how kind of disappointing it was to have the character come back from wherever the hell and say, I was gone, like, what does that mean? What does it mean? What is it like? Can you do anything? Can you do things besides just make Adira sad? Like, I want to have this relationship bear some tangible fruit. So I'm hopeful that there's something there with them. I'm really looking forward to seeing Saru and Sakal interact and resolve that. And I just hope that everything works out okay for Saru. If they hurt my boy, I'm burning this place to the ground.
All right, guys. This means we're coming up to the closeout of the episode here. Standout moments. What was your favorite lines of dialogue? Your favorite scenes?
For me, it was the scene between Aurelio and Stamets. There was just so much subtext going on, so many layers of different emotions and themes and storylines. I just thought it was a very, very tightly written scene and expertly performed by the two actors. It was just the standout scene for me, that one.
Great. Ian, what about you?
Yeah, I think to piggyback on that, I think the three standout scenes were the scenes that were just two actors working together. The Aurelio Stamets sequences, the Vance and Osiris sequences, obviously, as we've talked about at length, but also the Michael and Stamets sequences at the very end. Sort of they happened at the end of the episode. We didn't talk about them as much as the others, but Stamets' pain is so tangible, and the layers of that dynamic, the duty versus running off and rescuing your loved ones when you know you have that opportunity. Heartbreaking stuff, affecting stuff. I really liked their back and forth, and I'm curious to see what the lasting consequences of that are going to be.
For me, I absolutely love that scene with the final speech by Admiral Vance. And, he's been my favorite new character. He really channels the absolute best of Captain Picard. He plays his cards close to the vest, and the whole sequence with Osira plays out like a classic next-gen Ready Room scene. Very quotable, and his passion for the ideals of the Federation. He refuses to give in to an easy way out. And, he says he's seeking that moral clarity, and no matter how dark it gets, and that's just that kind of hope and optimism from Starfleet, from Star Trek, from the Federation that we've all come to know and love, and to have it showcased in such a clear way and have such a complex, cautious, and, hoping for the optimism, but still, understanding of his responsibility to protect who's there. Really love this moment with Admiral Vance, and it plays off really well. And I hope he stays on for season 4. He's a character that I want to see more of.
Yeah, he's a good Merle. We need more of those.
A good Merle.
He's a good Merle in a believable, realistic way. Just to again follow up with what you said about the sort of statement of principles at the end there. Yeah, like he's given this really, really, really tempting offer on the table. It's super compelling. The stakes are very clear. Like, he would give up a lot to make this work. He begs her at the very end before she beams away. Like he says to her, like, be as good as I know, your people
are. Yeah.
And she just can't do it. And it's not that it's not a big ask. It is. But what he's saying is essentially like, we can't make lasting commitments to justice when we have utterly lawless leaders, in the system. Not that there's any parallels to the real world there, but we can't sell to people at home or abroad the idea of justice if you don't even apply that to your own leadership structure.
That's right. And shout out here to Noah Averbach-Katz as the Andorian Rin. I am sad to see him go here, but much like Kenneth Mitchell, I'm certain that we're going to see him in future Trek shows as various alien characters.
I certainly hope so. They do a pretty good job of reusing folks, especially who initially appear in some form of prosthesis. It's easier to do.
And I guess I'll drop a little spoiler here, but Noah's actually going to be joining us on the podcast in a future episode here, so that's very exciting.
Looking forward to it, yeah.
So with that, gents, that closes out this episode. Luke, thank you for coming on, man. It was really good to have you here and to chat a little bit about Trek. What do you have coming up?
Like I said at the outset, we have some supplemental Make It So episodes coming quite soon. I'm gonna keep a special guest under wraps for now, but we have one coming up. And then we're going to have some supplementary episodes, just talking in general about certain aspects of Picard, like the Borg and Romulans and the overall kind of, culture and picture throughout all of the Treks and stuff like that. So, I think we had confirmation by Jerry on Twitter, I think, that they are, at the moment, unless any more measurements are enforced, but at the moment they're looking to start filming February 1st. So I'm hoping the ball's starting to get rolling on season 2 of Picard.
Yeah, at this point it's hard to... Well, I guess they could premiere... What are they thinking? End of this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think for certain Discovery Season 4 will air before Picard.
Production's already underway on that.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, exactly.
I guess it really remains to be seen how the virus all shakes out for them.
Yeah, I mean, at least with Disco being Canadian-based production, their restrictions are a little bit less stringent than California's right now, because California is a shit show.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole country is, let's be honest.
Make It So is also part of the We Made This network. You can find all these great shows on WeMadeThisPod.com. You can find We Are Starfleet on Twitter and Instagram at StarfleetPod. Please feel free to send us an email. We are StarfleetWMTR@gmail.com, and we will read and talk about your emails.
Yes, we've done it. You
have proof. Mr. Luke Winch, thank you so much for coming on. Ian, thank you for this great episode breakdown. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us and listening in. I know this was a long one. If you like what you heard, please drop us a 5-star review. That really helps with getting our name out there a little bit. And stay tuned to hear more about what's coming up on the We Made This network.
Elsewhere on We Made This. The time is now. A Millennium podcast.
But no, I mean, I will say that Rise of the Machines also kind of like argues against
Terminator 2, of course.
Back to where it was.
Like Rise of the Machines, like then goes, maybe they're both right, and shrugs its shoulders. It's like, maybe you can prevent Judgment Day, but only for a little while. And it's like, that's not an argument. Pick a side. Pick a lane. You can either change the past or you can't. None of this wishy-washy. You can change it sometimes, but you can't really change it. So it all balances out. Yeah, no, pick a damn side.
Don't say the C word.
On the back of my right arm, I have a tattoo of Phil Collins. It's the front cover of No Jacket Required.
This was the one that I expected you to pick, I'll be honest with you. Because it is my favourite of your tattoos.
Yeah. I mean, it was a tattoo I got as a joke. A lot of my tattoos that I've got, a lot of everything that I do is because it's a joke, or if I think something's funny.
We Buy Records.
Eric Clapton and Van Morrison have released an anti-lockdown song. How do you think about this? Where does this sit on the shitometer?
I think it redefines the shitometer.
Right.
I think it's raising money for musicians who are affected by the lockdown and the lack of gigs, etc. Which is a good thing.
Yep.
But then you see Van Morrison and Eric Clapton, a bad thing. So,
right.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, I love Van Morrison's music. I don't particularly like Eric Clapton's music. I quite like the 60s stuff. But they're a couple of whinging old men, aren't they? Old man babies complaining that they can't go and lick whoever they want.
Ooh.
I know. But that's what they're singing about, I think. I haven't checked that. I assume that the lyrics are about...
You can take it as read that I haven't heard it.
It's not likely to have a banging donk on it, is it?
It's unlikely to have a banging donk.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.
We Are Starfleet is a podcast dedicated to Star Trek discovery and how it relates to the story, ethos, and canon of Star Trek. Join your host, Mike Slammer, as he sits down with guests from all over the world to talk disco. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Starfleet Pod. Follow for more Star Trek podcasts, such as The Sanctuary, a politics and economics of Star Trek pod, Rarely Going, a Star Trek Lower Decks podcast, and Make It So, a Star Trek Picard podcast. We Are Starfleet is produced as part of the We Made This network of podcasts. We Made This brings together popular culture podcasts around film, TV, music, and more that hopefully educate, excite, and don't take themselves too seriously. Check us out at www.wemadethispod.com. Original music composed and performed by Anthony Fuscaldo.